Hey there, fabulous financiers. Welcome back to another episode of the Do.Different.Better Show, where we talk about wealth wisdom and money moves, making finance simple for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO and founder of Social Impact Now and Connect Up Institute, and managing director of the Integrated Capital Fund. Thanks for joining me today. Last week, we talked about why tax efficient investing what it really means, and why it's crucial for both individuals and small businesses. I shared with you some powerful strategies like using tax advantage accounts like 401ks and Roth IRAs, and why investing in index funds and ETFs could save you big bucks in the long run and take your tax savings to the next level. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for many of us, and I am no exclusion: fear and anxiety around money. If you've ever felt that pit in your stomach when it comes to your finances, you're not alone. But here's the good news: you don't have to let those fears run you or run the show. So let's get into it and start breaking down what are these money anxieties and how do we overcome them. So, all right, let's first start by acknowledging something right off the bat. Money is a big deal. It touches almost every aspect of our lives, from our basic needs to achieving our dreams for the future. But for something that is so central to our lives, why does it cause so much fear and anxiety? Well, money is tied to our sense of security and our identity, and even possibly our self worth. When there's uncertainty around money, that is the biggest time when fear and anxiety can creep in. So, why does it even matter? Well, and why are we talking about this now? Because fears just don't come up out of nowhere. They stay in our heads. They affect how we make decisions, how we approach opportunities, and ultimately how we live our lives. And when we let fear dictate our relationship with money, we might avoid looking at our finances, procrastinate on paying bills, or even miss out on investing in our own future. So it's super important to understand what are our fears and where they might be coming from, and quite possibly like how we might be able to overcome them. So now let's really understand the roots of money anxiety, and let's get in a little deeper into where does money anxiety come from. And you might see Mr. Skittles, he might be making an appearance today, so keep an eye out for him. Often our money anxiety comes from our money story. And you heard in the first episode, I really talked a lot about my own personal money story and a little bit of my money journey, you know. But the experience and beliefs about money that we pick up, we get them at a very, very young age. Maybe you grew up in a household where money was always tight, and maybe you heard things like money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford that. I know in my house, it's like if you wanted something, well, go ahead and earn the money to get whatever it is that you wanted, because there wasn't a whole lot left over. There wasn't extra. And these messages can stick with us and shape how we think about money as we grow into adulthood and beyond. There are lots of message that can be just as damaging, like men are better at managing money, or maybe there were no conversations at all about money, but it always seemed to be around, and there maybe seemed to be an endless supply of it. So now you have an opposite relationship with money, of like you have no cognition or understanding of what it takes or how much things cost, and that can be just as detrimental. So here's a fun fact and something you might find interesting. Research shows that our money habits and attitudes are largely formed by age 7. Can you believe that? Age 7. That means these early experiences that we have with money have a lasting impact, and which is why it's so important to look at your own money story and understand your money story and figure out, like, what did you learn about money growing up and who did you learn it from? As I mentioned in the first episode, I got some conflicting messages. I got messages, subtle message or unspoken messages from my mom about money, who was very scarce, thought about money as this very scarce resource. Whereas my grandmother, who was not wealthy or well off by any means, had a very abundant mindset when it came to money. So I was always in this push pull sort of understanding or relationship around how money works and how to access it, and et cetera, et cetera. But These are questions that can help you to start to unravel the roots of some of your money anxiety. So let's talk about now about just what are some of the common fears. Some of the common fears that are out there is that fear of not having enough money, right? So once again, you maybe grew up in a house that their money was not in money was in short supply. But this also happens sometimes with wealthy people. I remember when I was in grad school, I wrote a paper, and it really talked about the types of attitudes around money after World War II. And there were, I'm sorry, World War One. And there were two types of people, and they were categorized as spendies and savings. And the savies were people who would, wear their underwear till the elastic was falling off, right? You may have heard the term squeezing the quarter until the eagle screams, right? They never threw anything out. They saved everything, even a shoestring, because they might need it in the future for something, for some reason. And then there were people who, decided that life is short and money you're not promised tomorrow, and so enjoy yourself. And so they would spend their money. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were reckless, but they were like, hey, we're going to go on a vacation, because why not? We don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. So these are some of the, once again, subtle messages you may have received from grandparents or great grandparents around do you feel that money is abundant, or there's not enough money? Whether you are this fear can lead to a scarcity mindset where you're constantly worried about running out of money, and it's just never going to be available, or you're never going to make enough. You make your first $1 million and you're like, well, I need to make another $1 million, and then I need to make another million, and then I need to make 10 million, and you're always chasing and chasing and chasing the money, even though you may actually have more than what you actually need. Another fear is making a mistake. So another big fear that people have is just really, quite frankly, messing up. And that's a general anxiety that I think we have as human beings, whether it's making a bad investment or missing a payment or simply not knowing enough to make some smart financial decisions. But this fear can keep us stuck in inaction because we're too afraid to take any step forward. Or maybe you've made an investment and then something bad happened, and that just soured you indefinitely or forever. And it doesn't have to be that. That was a situation and a point in time. And hopefully you have identified what you've learned from that experience so that you don't make that same mistake again. But fear of making a mistake, or having made a mistake, or having experienced a mistake, maybe in a partnership relationship or in a parent relationship, can definitely increase and put an exclamation point on any anxieties that you may have. The last common one is fear of being judged. And that one is, it might be the feeling of being embarrassed about your financial situation, or worried that you're not keeping up with your peers. You may have heard the term keeping up with the Joneses, right? If somebody gets a new siding on their house, you need to get new siding on your house, but you really aren't in a financial position to take on that sort of investment. But you are really wanting to make sure that you are seen as somebody who's on par with the rest of the folks that are in your community or in your friend group or others. I had a partner, and I remember one of the things that was so frustrating is he really suffered from this. We were a young couple, and we were trying to save for a car. We didn't have a car, and my partner at the time worked a couple of blocks from home. We had agreed that he would come home and make lunch at home. Well, many of the guys that he worked with, they were in a different financial position, and they always ate out for lunch, whether it was McDonald's or whatever it was, but they were eating out every day. Now, consequently, my partner is, our bank was around the corner from his job. So almost 2 or 3 times a week, he was pulling out $20 from the ATM. So you can imagine, over a course of a week, that's $40 to $60. And over the course of the month, you're well over $200. And if you're trying to save for a car, that's a lot. That's going to make it a lot harder to save for a car. So that his whole thing was, he didn't want to have to tell his friends that he couldn't eat out with them. He wanted to be part of the crowd. And that can be a very strong pull. But if you have to start to really think about the present and the future, and what is it that you're trying to either save for, you're trying to accomplish, and is what you're doing today actually going to get you to your goal? So Now let's talk about how money anxiety affects us and the fears and how they show up in our lives. They can manifest in a number of ways, some that are obvious and some that are maybe not so obvious. So one way that it shows up is procrastination and avoidance. This used to be a big one with me. I would not open up envelopes. I would see the red past due bill on the envelope and I would be like, I'm just not going to open that. Or I would have debt collectors calling me and I would just not answer the phone. Unfortunately, that doesn't make it go away, right? That bill that's sitting on the counter that's waiting to be paid, or the savings account that you've been meaning to set up or and haven't gotten around to, those are anxiety talking to you, right? Those are clues and signals of how your anxiety might be showing up. When we're overwhelmed or fearful, it's easy to push things off and avoid them, but that only makes the problem worse in the long run. One of the things that I realized was I had a ticket and I was like, I don't have any money to pay this ticket, so I'm not even going to like pay attention to these notices that I'm getting about this ticket. Well, avoiding it, there was interest and extra fees that were building up, and they were notifying me of these extra fees. And eventually, they got so expensive. I think it was a $300 ticket turned into like a $1,500 ticket because I just kept avoiding and kept avoiding and kept avoiding. Finally, I decided, I'm like, I can't keep doing this. I called the courthouse. I was able to not only one, get on a payment plan, but I was also able to get it reduced by doing some volunteer hours, some community service hours. So it was a very valuable lesson to me to like just take your bills on, even when you feel like you don't have a way out. Just reach out to the bill collector and talk to them and see what can be worked out. You may find more often than not they're far more accommodating because in the end of the day they want their money, right? So, but let's move on to another way that it can show up. Fears and anxieties can show up, and that is impulsive spending. So, on the flip side, money anxiety can also lead to impulsive spending. It sounds counterintuitive, but when we're stressed about money, we might spend it as a way to cope. Whether it's treating ourselves to feel better or buying things that we don't need. Some of you might be looking at your Amazon account, and we're doing that to fill some kind of void. Often we may hear this called retail therapy, right? It's a joking way or euphemistic way of something that could be a very serious problem and avoiding your situation. And this then can turn into cycles of guilt that then cause more anxiety as your financial situation worsens. I had a friend in college who took her financial aid money, bought all these new outfits and new handbags, but still had her tuition to pay. She may have felt better in that moment when she bought that purse or bought those shoes, but then her education was in jeopardy because she didn't use the financial aid money for actually what it was for, which was paying tuition, and eventually ended up getting kicked out of school because she didn't pay her tuition bill. The next one of how it shows up is by missed opportunities. Perhaps the most damaging impact of money anxiety is missed opportunities. When we're too afraid to take what we perceive as a risk. Now, there might be some genuine risk there, but we might be making the risk bigger in our minds than what it actually is, whether it's investing or starting a business or even negotiating for a raise. We limit our potential and keep ourselves from building the wealth and the life that we deserve and that we want. Here's another fun fact that might surprise you. Studies have shown that money anxiety can actually lead to physical health problems like high blood pressure and sleep disorders. That's right. Stressing about money isn't just bad for your wallet, it's also bad for your health. So, how do we break the cycle? How do we move from a place of fear to a place of confidence and control? It starts with acknowledging your fears and then taking small, manageable steps to address them. Baby steps. You hear me talk about on the show a lot. Step ladder approach. We're going to start at the first step and we're going to get some mastery. We're going to get some comfort. We're going to get some prowess around and some proficiency around the first step. And then do that to get to the next step and that to the next step. One of my favorite quotes by Tony Robbins if you keep doing something every day, if you give it 1% effort, the next day you don't increase your success by 1%. You actually now compounded because you've learned something when you did the first 1% effort that then gets pounded, and it's not 2%, maybe it's 3%. And then the next day, if you put 1% effort, now it's 5%. And the next day you put 1% effort, it might be 7%. So you're constantly compounding on the small steps that you take forward. So I just want you to keep that in mind. So here are some concrete tips though. Tip number one, face your fears. The first step is to face your fear head on. So understanding and thinking about, what actually are you afraid of? And I want you to write it down. Seeing it on paper helps to demystify it and make it feel more manageable. One of the things that I talk about is in any situation, whether it's a money situation or some other situation, I think about it as walking around in a dark room and with a whole bunch of furniture, and you keep bumping up into the furniture, right? And you're just walking around and you keep stubbing your toe or you keep hitting your knee in a dark room that's full of furniture. Well, the process of what we're talking about here of facing the fear is we're not moving the furniture, we're just turning on the light switch. So now we know where everything is and we're not bumping into it anymore. Moving the furniture might be too big and maybe we can't move the furniture by ourselves, right? It's just too heavy, right? But now that the lights are on, we can now navigate it a lot better. So that is what we're talking about when I'm talking about facing your fear, is just really understanding and asking the question, like, why do I think this way? What were the messages that I received that maybe influence how I think about this thing called money and all the things that come, and shopping and spending and saving? Like, do I not save because you know, I don't know. Think about that. What could be the reason? So that's tip number one, face your fear. Tip number two, get educated. Often money anxiety comes from not knowing enough. The more you learn about personal finance, the more confident you're going to become, like listening to this show. But start with the basics. Start with budgeting and saving and investing. If you feel like you've got those things down, then you can take it to the next level, right? And start thinking about investing. And there's no shame in starting wherever you are. This is not a race. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You're going to be interfacing with money from now until you take your last breath. So taking the steps one at a time and dealing with where you are and your understanding and your skills and your talents. But there are just so many tools, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So tip number one, face your fears. Tip number two, get educated. And tip number three is take action. Finally, take action, even if it's just a small step. Maybe it's creating a budget. Maybe it's setting up a savings account. Maybe it's finally opening that investment account that you've been talking about because you've been listening to my other episodes where we talked about joining an investment group. But each small step builds momentum and helps to reduce your anxiety about your relationship with money. So, here is my call to action. I want to challenge you today by taking one step, just one, towards addressing your money anxiety. Maybe it's just looking at your bank statement, right? Something as simple as looking at your bank statement. Maybe putting on the calendar of the one day a month, every month, that you're going to look at your bank statement. Just see what's happening, what's going on. I recommend getting it on paper. Looking at something digitally, often you can get your statements sent to you digitally. I like seeing it on paper. So even if you take it digitally, print it off. There is a mechanism in your brain that takes in information differently when you see it on printed paper than when you see it on a computer. So I encourage you to take that extra step to print it and look at the information, right? So, so from there, then what we're going to do is whatever step you're going to do, you're going to remember every journey starts with a single step. So that's it for this segment on understanding fear and anxiety around money. I hope you're starting to see that these fears, while common, don't have to control you. Stay focused because in the next segment, we're going to dive into some practical strategies for overcoming these fears and taking control of your financial future. And hey, if you're finding this episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review and share it with anyone you might that might need to know a little bit more about financial information. I will see you after the break when I show you how to do different better. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Do Different Better Show. In our last segment, we got to hear about dealing with fear and anxiety and how common it is for many of us around money. We talked about where these fears come from and how they impact our decisions and why it's really important to face them. Now that we've laid the groundwork, it's time to get into the nitty gritty. How do we actually overcome these fears and start feeling empowered about our financial decisions? We'll also dive into some practical strategies that will help you take control of your finances and kick that money anxiety to the curb. Okay. So, strategy number one, building a budget. Let's start with the fundamentals of personal finance, and that is building a budget. Now, I know the word budget can be a buzzkill, but hear me out. A budget isn't just about restriction, it really is about empowerment. It's giving you a very clear picture of where your money is going so that you can make some really good decisions. I often find when I'm working with small businesses and mentoring them, the biggest trap that I see that they're falling into is that they are not building a budget for the organization, for the business, so that they never really know when they've overspent on a particular item or service, and they have no idea that they've underspent and where there might be opportunities to take some of that money to reinvest into the company, hire more employees, et cetera, et cetera. But here's another reason why budgeting helps. One of the main reasons why people feel anxious about money is because they don't have a clear picture of what's coming in and what's going out. When you don't know where you stand financially, it's easy to let your imagination run wild and tell a very different story, even lie to yourself. And that's when anxiety sets in. The brain is a magical instrument. It is really good at lying and creating a false narrative that we then believe, like, oh, I only did DoorDash twice last week when actually you did it 4 times, right? It'll lie to us and tell us what we want to hear to make ourselves feel better about maybe some of the not so great decisions that we make. But a budget gives you clarity, and clarity gives you control. So, how do you create a budget that works for you? First, start by tracking your income and your expenses. And there's lots of digital tools out there, but there's also just plain old spreadsheets, Google Sheets, Excel, and there's also just pen and paper. Maybe you're old school. Maybe if you're the way your brain works, putting it down on pencil and paper is really the best thing for you to do, and that's okay. But what you want to do is you want to list out all your sources of income. Do you have a side hustle? Do you have a main job? Do you have child support payments or alimony payments that are coming in? Making sure you're accounting for all the money that you have coming in, no matter where it's coming from, right? But then you want to talk about break down your expenses. Like, what do you pay for your housing? Are you renting? Do you have a mortgage? How much are you spending on food? All of your food. Costco, Sam's Club, the grocery store, the farmer's market, all of your expenses, what you're spending on transportation, gas. Are you taking metro? Do you have to fix are you biking and you've got probably twice a year you get a flat tire? That's all part of your transportation expense and entertainment and so on. So your Netflix, any streaming services, going out to the movies, going out with friends and hanging out, that's all part of your entertainment. But you have to be honest with yourself from a judgment-free zone. The goal is to get an accurate picture of your financial situation. But don't forget those sneaky little expenses that pop up unexpectedly, like gifts and car repairs and medical bills. One thing that I like to do is I like to just budget $100 to $200 a month for possible car repairs. So then by the time I do have a car repair, even if it's my oil change, I've already budgeted that money. Even though I might have a newer car that requires less maintenance, you never know. So just by putting that money away, and guess what? Then it's there if you need it. If you don't end up spending it, that's fine as well. Maybe you decide at the end of the year, if I didn't have any car repairs, I'm going to take that and open an investment account, right? That's one way that you can leverage your budget to your own benefit. So, strategy number two, setting realistic financial goals. And we've talked about that in previous episodes. When it comes to overcoming money anxiety, having clear, realistic goals can be such a game changer. Goals can give you something to work towards and help you focus on a bigger picture rather than getting bogged down on the day to day worries, right? Of I spent $1 here, or $2 here, or $5 there. But I want you to start small. One of the key ways to setting effective goals is by starting small. If you're drowning in debt, don't set a goal that you're going to be debt free by next month. It's just going to stress you out even more and cause your anxiety and really probably cause you to not be successful. Instead, break it down into manageable, smaller steps. For example, aim to pay off one credit card and set aside a small amount of cash each month towards an emergency fund. When I found myself in a lot of debt, I just created a spreadsheet of all the debt that I had. I did a spreadsheet of like, uh, most of them paying the minimum payment and then going hard on one piece of debt. And then I could see over time, because on this axis, I said this payment was going to pay down this debt by X amount of time. And once that debt was paid off, I was going to take that payment and apply it to the next debt line that I had. And so pretty soon, it took me about 4 or 5 years, but I got myself completely out of debt. I think I had about 4 or 5 credit cards. I had an outstanding car loan that I had to pay on. It was a big amount of debt, and it took a lot of discipline and a lot of effort, and it was not fun, but I felt so much relief and so much of my anxiety lifted when all of that was over, and I never got myself into that situation ever again. So once again, write down your goals, keep them visible, put them on the refrigerator, put them on your phone's lock screen. I do that a lot. If I have a big goal that I'm trying to accomplish or a habit that I'm trying to establish, I will put it as a lock screen on my phone. That way, every time I look at my phone, which we all know is very often, we look at our phones, it's a constant reminder of what I'm working towards to help keep me motivated, right? Maybe if I'm saving for a big trip, I've got a picture of the beach on my lock screen on my phone. Whatever it is you find that is going to be helpful for you, that's what I want you to do, right? Strategy number three is educating yourself about money. We talked a little bit about that in the first segment. One of the biggest contributors to money anxiety is a lack of knowledge. When you don't understand how money works, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and scared or even dismissive. I find that a lot. A lot of people will mitigate or make small any conversations around money and that it's not important, right? It may not be important to you, but it is in the how you associate and are connected to the world. So you have to have some good understanding so that you don't find yourself on the bottom side of a situation, right? But there's, financial literacy is something that you can constantly improve on no matter where you're starting from. If you know nothing about even how a bank works, start there. There's so many great YouTube videos as well as the show to really keep you informed on different aspects of money. The next thing that I will offer is to take one step at a time. You don't need to be a financial expert overnight. You start with the basics, like I said, with like budgeting and money management and debt management. And once you've gotten a handle on these, you can start to move into more advanced steps like investing, retirement planning, and tax strategies. There's lots of great resources that are out there, podcasts like this one. There's books, there's online courses, there's even social media. There's some great influencers that you can follow that are also talking about some of these things. But find something that resonates for you and just dive in. Maybe you set aside some time of like 15 minutes on Sunday morning while you're drinking your tea or your coffee. You're going to watch listen to a podcast, or you're going to watch a YouTube video, or you're actually going to look at your bank statement. Whatever it is, I find putting it on the calendar, making it a habit, whether it's once a month or once a week or once a quarter, that you actually do that is a really valuable place to start. So, strategy number 4, develop a support system. Last but definitely not least, let's talk about the importance of having a support system. We have heard time and time again, and the research shows that when you do something in a support system, it's always better. When you grieve in community, it's better. When you're trying to lose weight, you lose weight in community. People who do that in community are far more successful than people who try to do it alone. Handling and getting better about money is no different. While it's often seen as a taboo topic, It doesn't have to be. Having people you can talk to about your financial situation can make a world of difference. And so that really requires you to find your money community, whether it's friends or family or an online community of strangers who become friends. Find people who are on a similar financial journey and are looking to support each other. This is where you can share your goals, you can share your wins, you can even share your setbacks without any shame or judgment. Knowing that you're not alone can also help reduce anxiety and keep you motivated. But then don't underestimate the value of professional help. If you're feeling overwhelmed, consider working with a financial advisor or even a therapist who specializes in financial issues. They can often give you guidance and help you create a plan and provide the accountability you need to stick with it. So, here is my call to action to you. I challenge you to make a list of people you could reach out to, and then reach out to one of those people. Make sure that it's someone that you trust and that you feel comfortable about starting a conversation about money, right? It doesn't have to be a deep dive into all your financials. You don't need to come with, you know, reams of paper, but just start to talk about how you're feeling about money and see where it goes. You might be surprised about how much better you feel after just getting that off of your chest. And so, once again, when you think about that list, starting that list of people who you think might be good people to talk to or a good support system, also maybe start to think about what will you do if you start the conversation and it's not going well? How will you exit the conversation? Right. I think it's really important to have an exit plan because maybe this person says something that strikes a chord with you and doesn't really feel good to you. So how might you want to separate yourself from that conversation? Because what you don't need is to feel worse than you already feel. So well, with all of that, we've talked about four strategies, right? I'm going to go over them one more time. So, first is building a budget that works for you. Strategy number two, setting realistic financial goals. Strategy number three, educating yourself about money. And strategy number four, developing a support system. Okay. That wraps up this segment on strategies for overcoming fear and anxiety around money. I hope these tips have given you some practical ways to start taking control and reducing your money related stress. But remember, I know you've got this, and taking one step at a time is the way to go. Stay tuned because in our next segment, we're going to talk about how to maintain a healthy money mindset for the long haul. So don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Share this episode with someone who could use a little financial empowerment. And I'll see you back here after the break and I'll show you how to do different better. Welcome back to the Do Different Better Show. If you've been tuning in, you know that we've been taking a deep dive into overcoming fear and anxiety around money. We've talked about understanding where these fears come from, and we've covered some really powerful strategies on how to help you conquer these anxieties. Now, as we slide into the home stretch, we're going to focus on something just as important, and that is how to maintain a healthy money mindset over the long haul. Because let's be real, overcoming fear and anxiety is just the first step. The key to lasting financial peace is cultivating a mindset that keeps you grounded and focused and in control. So let's get into it. First things first, let's talk about mindset. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to money is shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. A scarcity mindset is when you're constantly worried that there's never enough. There's never enough money. There's never enough opportunity. There's never enough security. This mindset is rooted in fear and it can hold you back from making the best financial decisions for you and your financial future. And as I talked about before, it might make you overlook opportunities. I'll give you a quick example, and I think I've shared this in the show before. I remember I was in my 20s. I was working at Nordstrom and I had started a 401k. Pretty much they signed everybody up. Best thing, I didn't know what a 401k was, didn't understand what a 401k was and why it might be important. Yes, people tell you what it is and how it's valuable, but as a 22-year-old, you don't really understand anything that people are telling you in that regard, especially if you did not grow up with that as being a money conversation. Money was very scarce in my house. No one talked about retirement planning. No one talked about money saving or anything like that. There wasn't any left over to save. And I got this great opportunity. I met somebody and they were from overseas. I met them in the US and they had gone overseas and we had been communicating. And they said, I really wish that you could meet up with me in Spain. And I was like, I'm 22. This is a great opportunity. When will I have another opportunity to go to Spain? So I took the $5,000 that I'd been saving in my 401k and I went to Spain. And while I don't know that taking out all my 401k was the best decision, what I will say is I don't regret taking that trip. I've never regretted taking that trip and going to Spain and Portugal and Paris as a young person. And when I got back, I felt I would be able to bounce back. Worst case scenario, I'd go get a job back at Nordstrom. But what ended up happening was a couple months after I returned from that 2-week trip, I got a higher paying job, which kicked off my professional career. So while I don't want you to throw caution to the wind, when we talk about making investment, making that trip was an investment that I made in myself. I wanted to see other places. I also wanted to see this person who I was very much interested in, but also it was really about, I wanted to travel. And I knew that I was going to be going back to college and I didn't know when I was going to have another opportunity to travel like that. So it was really this opportunity for me to take advantage. And by having that 401k, it allowed me to make that investment. And once again, I don't regret it. My thinking was, I'm young. I can go back and do a 401k again. But I was just so excited that I had that opportunity. And as I mentioned, it's not something that I've regretted. So let's talk about scarcity versus abundance. So on the other hand, an abundance mindset is rooted in the belief that there's plenty to go around. The opportunities are endless. That money can be made and remade, and that you have the power to create the financial future you want. So as demonstrated in the story I just showed you, I had an abundance mindset. I can make more money. I will have a job when I come back from this 2-week trip of Europe. And I'm going to be okay. And once again, those are messages that I got from my grandmother. The messages that I received from my mom throughout my life was that there would never be enough. There's no way I could have taken that trip because I would have spent all $5,000 and I could be poor and destitute. I'd never get I could maybe be a year before I got another job. And I knew that just wasn't going to be the case. I was very smart. I was very intelligent. I had a really good network. And so I believed I would find a job, and worst case scenario, I could go back to the job I just left. So, but once again, this isn't about being reckless or ignoring your financial responsibilities, but it is about recognizing that fear and anxiety are often driven by a sense of lack, and consciously choosing to focus on the possibilities instead could be a really, really powerful shift in your mindset. So one way to cultivate an abundance mindset is by practicing gratitude. Take a few minutes every day and write down what you're grateful for, especially when it comes to money. Maybe you have a roof over your head. Maybe you have the ability to pay your bills. Focusing on what you have rather than what you don't can often change your perspective. Now, next up, let's talk about how to develop a positive relationship with money. For a lot of people, money is a source of stress and guilt and even shame. But here's the thing. Money is a tool, just like anything else, like a hammer, like a screwdriver. It's neither good nor bad. It's how we use it that matters. Developing a positive relationship with money means recognizing its role in your life and treating it with respect and making decisions that align with your values. So, one way to improve your relationship with money is to stop seeing it as a burden and start seeing it as an enabler, right? Instead of thinking of what money is taking away from you, like time or freedom or peace of mind, focus on what it can provide, which is security, opportunities, and the ability to achieve your goals, right? So let's say you're working to pay extra hours to pay off a debt. Instead of focusing on the exhaustion and the sacrifice, think about the freedom and relief that you'll feel once the debt is gone. Reframing your mindset can make a big difference in how you feel about your financial journey. So now that we've talked about mindset, let's talk about the practical side of maintaining a healthy relationship with money, creating sustainable financial habits. Because let's face it, mindset is crucial, but without the right habits to back it up, it's easy to fall back into your old patterns. So here are a couple of things you can do. Automate your finances. One of the best ways to create sustainable financial habits is through automation. When you automate your savings, your bill payments, or even your investments, you can take the decision making out of the equation. This reduces the chances of procrastinating or forgetting, and it helps to stay consistent with your financial goals. So you can set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings account. This way, you're constantly building your savings without even having to think about it. This also goes for retirement contributions. If your employer offers a 401k or similar plan, set up automatic contributions that now you can regularly invest in your future. Here's a tip, and I shared this as part of my money journey. Even automate $10 a week into your savings account can make a big difference over time. But the key is consistency, not necessarily the amount. Another thing that you can do is do regular check ins. So let's talk about the importance of regular check ins. Just like when you go to the doctor for regular health checkups, your finances need regular check ins too. This doesn't have to be a daunting task. It can be just staying on top of your financial situation and making adjustments. One thing, and I think I shared this earlier, set aside time each month to review your finances. Check your budget, track your spending, see how you're progressing towards your goal. Are there areas where you're overspending? Are there opportunities for you to save more or invest differently? These monthly check-ins will help you keep track and help you catch any potential issues before they become bigger problems. Once again, do this in community, in a support system. Do this with someone, right? Whether it's a friend or a sibling or a partner, maybe your kids, maybe your adult kids, you can do this together. And then have an annual review. So once a year, do a comprehensive review of your financial situations. I love to do this. I go back and I look at all of like my bills. I see I even really becomes interesting is like my cable bill and my energy bills, and looking at what's happening with those over the course of the year, right? It's one thing to look at it every month or every quarter. It's another thing when you stand back and take a look at it over the course of a year. Annually is a great time to look at you and review your investment portfolio and evaluate your insurance needs, adjust your goals for the coming year. It's a good time to reflect on your financial mindset, and are there lingering anxieties or fears that you may want to address and set up as goals for the next year. That's something that I really, really enjoy doing. I'm like, what's one thing I want to focus on in the next 365 days? And it doesn't necessarily have to be at the beginning of the year. I have a friend of mine, her new year is her birthday. She doesn't necessarily do her what she wants to focus on or goal setting at the beginning of the year. She does it on as part of her ritual with her birthday, right? So once again, let me go over some tips that you can do as far as like taking your mindset from short term to long term. So really focus on an abundance mindset, developing a positive relationship with money, creating some sustainable financial habits through automation, and by doing regular financial check ins, whether they be monthly reviews and annual reviews, and possibly doing them in community with somebody, with another person. So, there you have it, folks. It's a comprehensive guide to overcoming fear and anxiety around money and maintaining a healthy money mindset. Remember, it's just not about what you do with your money, but how you think about it. By shifting your mindset and developing positive financial habits and staying consistent with regular check ins, you can build a life where money works for you and not against you. I hope you found these tips helpful and that you are ready to take action. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Join me in some upcoming episodes when I'll be announcing some very special guests and some really great discounted services and events that you will not want to miss. So stay tuned. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with others. Let me know what you think of the show. We love comments. So tell us how this show has helped you. If there's a money question or finance question you have, or if there's someone you want me to interview, hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram. And until next time, stay empowered, stay focused. And I can't wait to see you next week when I show you how to do different better.